Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Beginner's FreeCAD Series for version 1. The twisted part is a common CAD problem often used to demonstrate various solutions to the same challenge. I'll cover several of these methods on my YouTube channel, exploring different workflows to create the same part. In this lesson, we'll explore how to approach the challenge using a loft, building on the foundations learnt in the previous lessons, especially around how to control the B-spline interpolation of the loft to generate a smooth transition between the profiles. Let's start by examining the technical drawing and the subject in detail. Here is the technical drawing for the part. It may seem complex at first, but as we've learned before, by analysing the subject, we can envision it as a composite structure. If we break it down, it consists of 3 distinct sections. Sections 1 and 3 are identical, while section 2 is the most complex part. Looking at section 1 and 3, and using our flowchart, we can begin working through the logical process to discover the operations needed. We see that we have cross sections that remain constant throughout the subject. This leads us to a straightforward extrude. As we use in the part design, this will be a pad. However, the twisted section in the middle is more complex. Since no primitive shapes fit the twisted section, we turn our attention to examine its cross sections again. These are not circular. So the next step is to proceed and ask, are the cross sections through the object the same shape? At first glance, it may seem obvious that they are. However, each cross section is at a different angle. When analysing this step, we must account for this. Instead of asking, are the cross sections through the object the same shape, we modify it and ask, are the cross sections through the object the same shape and orientation? Therefore, the cross sections are not identical. If we look at the top and the bottom profiles, they differ, and there are multiple similar cross sections throughout the section. Additionally, when viewed from the side, the travel of the shape is straight. This suggests that we would use a multi-section loft operation. So we now have our operations defined, a basic pad for section 1 and 3, and a loft for section 2. But where do we start? And how do we connect these sections together through these operations? The key is that the transition between the sections share the same profile, so they can be reused. This allows us to begin with a pad and then use one of the relevant faces as a starting profile for the loft. This approach links the pad to the loft and finally back to another pad. Let's start our modelling in the part design. If you like what you see and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via Ko-Fi or Ko-Fi at ko-fi.com/MANG0 or via PayPal at paypal.com/paypalme/DarrenBEstone. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. I've opened up FreeCAD and we've created a new document. I'm in the Part Design Workbench. We'll start by creating a new body and a new sketch. We're sketching section 1. Placing this along the XY plane. I'm going to use the circle and create a circular sketch in here. Now, I could do this along the horizontal axis, or I could do it at the center point. It doesn't really matter because we're going to use attachment rather than sketching just on the base planes. This means our features will be attached and offset relative to the faces that we've attached them to. Let's create our circle. Next, I'm going to create an arc. I'm going to use the create arc by center. Use this, we hover over the center point. Next, we come out. I'm going to attach to the vertical axis, see the point on line constraint there, and we'll create our arc. Attaching to the vertical axis again. We'll add constraints in a moment. Next, we'll use the polyline, attaching coincident to the point of the arc, coming out, clicking once, clicking for the vertical constraint, and then clicking and attaching the other side of the arc. Right click to cancel the tool, or hit escape. Now I can see I've got a tangent constraint here with this arc going to this line. If I haven't, I take the arc and the line and apply the tangency. Like this one, I haven't got a tangency constraint across these. We use the tangent and hit OK on the message. Let's add some dimensions. Using the dimensioning tool, click this line, bring this out, and set this to 40mm, and hit enter. This line here, click once, bring this up, click, and set this to 25. Using the same tool, we dimension the whole. Click once, bring this out, click again, and set this one to 25, and hit enter. We're fully constrained. Let's hit close. We have our first sketch. So now we've created the sketch, we need to pad it. Let's come up to the pad operation. The sketch is already selected. Click the pad. We're going to pad this 10mm. We want to pad this symmetrical to plane. And there is a reason for this. If I didn't pad this symmetrical to plane and hit OK, then the next operation when we create our sketch for our loft, using this face and creating a new sketch, our center of rotation will be here at this point. Remembering back, we're going to create a number of cross sections and rotate it around the center point. So the center point has to be here. Let's close that sketch. Click on the sketch and hit delete. Let's come back into the pad and set symmetrical to plane and hit OK. Now when we create the sketch on this face, new sketch, we're now centered. We're going to reference external geometry, but we're not going to lock it down via the coincident constraints. Let's use the external geometry tool and pull in top edge and the side edge. Right click to cancel the tool and then use the rectangle. I'm going to create a rectangle that's larger than the face itself. Right click again to cancel the tool. I can see we've got the imported edge here. Click that, you can see it's highlighted on the left hand side here. Take the top edge and make those equal. I'm going to do the same with the side, so take the side line and this edge, clicking it once, clicking the other, and make those equal as well. So we've got this rectangle here. It still needs to be locked down. And to do that, I take this point and this point, make it symmetrical, center point. Select one, select the other, select the middle, and use the symmetrical constraint. So why did I do this? Well, that's close. And look what happens when I rotate this. When I click on the sketch and come down to the attachment, because it's attached to a face, we can see the face in there, and use the angle. So when this rotates, you can see it doesn't deform. Click off, we've got no deformation across there at all. If I attach the points coincident to the edges, this will deform. And we'll show you that in the next sketch. Making them equal to the sides rather than constrain them down coincident allows the dimensions to stay the same, but keeps the same shape. Let's prove that by coming over to the sketch, clicking on it and pressing the spacebar. If I take this face, create a sketch, use the import geometry tool, create external geometry, and select the opposite points, and use the rectangle, hover over coincident to this point, then come over coincident to the other. This is fully constrained now. But if I close this, we can see the sketch in there. And if I look at the attachment offset, the angle, and start bringing this around and clicking off, see what happens, snapped back. Let's try that again. Let's say around about here. So you can see it's starting to deform. This is the reason why pulling the side dimensions rather than locking it down to the points. Let's take that sketch and hit delete. Click on the other one, press the spacebar to bring it back. Let's reset the angle. The angle is 95 degrees at the moment, what I set it to for the demonstration. Set this back to 0. I now want to position this forwards off the face. Let's come into the sketch and look at the attachment offset and the position. Remember, the Z is normal to sketch. So this is the normal moving away from the sketch here. So we set that to 2 millimeters and hit enter. Next, we're going to create another sketch. I'm going to take this face and create another sketch. At the moment, the sketch is behind the previous one. Now, it would be pointless to create the same profile. So I'm going to copy this. Now, there's many ways of doing this. We can duplicate it, we can clone it. But I'm going to introduce another tool now called the carbon copy. And that's this tool here, create carbon copy. Or we can get to it from sketch tools, and we've got create carbon copy in there. This one here. Once the tool's active, we can hover over the sketch and pull in the geometry. I can select the sketch, and you can see it's pulled in carbon copy of that sketch now. Let's right click to cancel the tool and have a look to see what it's done. So we've got equality constraints going across here, and everything's fully constrained. Let's hit close and then use the sketch, and we'll come down and set the Z position 26 millimeters. The angle was set to 45 degrees. So we're starting to create our profiles for the loft that's going to be attached to the pad. If this pad changes, then both these sketches are linked, so they will change as well. Click on the pad, and that's set the length to say 20 millimeters, and hit enter. We can see those have changed within. Set this back to 10. Let's create another copy of the sketch for our next profile. This time, I'm going to take the sketch and duplicate it. Let's come out to edit and duplicate selected object. We get the object selection appear. You may have the auto select depending objects, just uncheck that. Let's uncheck everything except for the top sketch. This one here, sketch 001, and hit OK. We have the duplicate now. Let's create some offset. Duplicated all the attachment modes, and the position, we'll set this to 50 millimeters and the angle of 90. We're going to create one more copy. Let's click on the sketch, and this time another way of duplicating this. Let's come up to edit and copy. Exactly the same. Unselect all, just select the top one and click OK. You notice that no copy has been made. We now need to paste this in here. Come up to edit and paste. You can use the Control-C, Control-V shortcuts, and we get a sketch. But you notice that it's outside the body. We have to drop it inside the body. The benefit of this over duplication is that we can paste it again. So if I come up to edit and hit paste again, we get another copy because it's still in the clipboard. I'm just going to click on that and hit delete on the keyboard because we only want one. Click on the sketch, come down to the position on the attachment, and I'm going to add 2 millimeters onto the 50 and hit enter. So we have all of the sketches. So now I want to create the loft through here. Our first profile is not going to be the sketch, it's going to be the face behind. Face of that pad. Click once on the face, don't click twice, otherwise just select the whole object. Just once, and use the additive loft. The pad face 3 has been placed in the object, our first profile. Let's add a section and then make sure we select the edge and we have the next profile added to our loft. Add section again. If we select the vertex, then what will happen, it will loft to that vertex, which we don't want. So click on the sketch, right click and remove that if that happens. Just select add section again and select an edge. And keep working through until we have all of the sections added. So I've now added all of them in here. Let's hit OK. And we can see that we've got our loft starting to go through here. We'll now work on section 3, which is a duplicate of this shape here. Now there are a number of ways of doing this. We could resketch this section. We could take a duplicate of this section and rotate it and attach it using attachment mode to this edge here, or we could use a carbon copy again. So you may be asking a question regarding the duplicate. What's the difference between a duplicate and a carbon copy? Well, let's come into the pad, click on this sketch and press the spacebar. I want to edit and duplicate selected object. Remove the XY plane, we don't need that. Just duplicate the sketch. We now have the sketch. If I double click on the sketch, I can change the data and constraints within just by modifying them. But if I close that and delete the duplicated sketch, this time we're going to make sure nothing's selected and create a sketch upon the base plane. And I want to use this plane here. You can see it's intersecting the middle of this loft, the XZ plane. Click on that. Our sketch is visible. We can see it sitting in here. I'm going to use the carbon copy now. Using the carbon copy tool. And we hover over this sketch. If we look down to the left, we get a message. Selected sketch is not parallel to this sketch. Hold Control plus Alt to allow non-parallel sketches. If I hold down Control and Alt on the keyboard, we can highlight this sketch now. If I click on it, it comes through. Notice something different. Let's right click to cancel the tool and inspect the data and constraints. They're in orange, which means they're externally controlled. If I double click on one, I can't change this. It's grayed out. There's a little icon on the end that opens the expression editor when we click on it. It's saying sketch constraint 10. This is linked to the sketch that we carbon copied it from. Let's close that and close the insert length. So if the master sketch changes, so will any sketches that have been derived from it. Let's close that now. And we have to place it. So if I click on the sketch, we've got the angle here. And we can set the angle, but notice it's rotating around its center point. So this can be 180 degrees. Let's zoom in a bit. And I'm going to use the Z direction on the attachment offset, Z position. This is normal to sketch, so it's going to come out the front. So I don't need the Z. That was a mistake. Let's go for the X. And we can move this into position. It's got to connect up with this edge here. So that's looking like 102 millimeters. Click off, click on the sketch and pad it. It's attached to the loft now. We need to use the symmetrical to plane and then hit OK. We have our finished object, but the additive loft is still visible at the moment. We just need to click on that and press the spacebar and then use the pad, press the spacebar on that. Because that's the tip, we can see it by the icon here, little green icon with the white arrow in there. And that's hide this sketch as well by clicking on it and pressing the spacebar. That's our finished object. Now, one thing to note is the transition between the pad and the loft. This might not be right. If I look from the front, we can see we've got a good transition in here. If we don't, we can come into the additive loft and start showing the sketches. We can see we've got sketch 1 there. Look at attachment offset along the Z. If I change this to say about 5 and click off, we see our transition between the pad and the loft will change. So I'm going to set this to 1. Therefore, we get a nice transition between those two. And we can do the same for the other side as well. Bring this around, go to the last sketch, press the spacebar, and we can see it there. Let's show the other one, this one here, and we can modify this one. Be a bit closer to change the transition. This controls the B-spline interpolation through the lofted profiles. So I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope to see you in the next lesson. If you like what you see and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via Ko-Fi or Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/MANG0 or via PayPal at paypal.com/PayPalMe/DarrenBEstone. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. I thank everybody that's donated so far. It really helps to keep the lights on so I can produce more content and also expand the channel. Thank you for liking, commenting and subscribing to these videos, and I hope to see you again in the next one.